Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning. And I dare I say Happy New Year because there's a lot of chat going on when is the cutoff date for Happy New Year.
I think you're running out of time here. It's a week past, Tommy. We're halfway
The
through
deadline.
January. I think you're
So,
done.
so I know Larry David has a 3-day limit.
It depends on
It's
if
like
you've seen people before, right?
Mm.
If I haven't
You
seen them
text?
yet, I feel like I'm a little bit more leeway to go a little bit further into the new year.
If
I
I
mean,
text someone, does that suffice though? Because I don't want to text to say Happy New Year. Say you wish me Happy New Year.
I only text it because I have an iPhone and I want that little graphic thing to show up and it does a little fireworks stuff when you say it. So
That's true. That is a nice little feature. I would say, yeah, you and I are well past now. We've seen each other, but if I haven't seen you, let's say I took a nice vacation and it's the 14th now. Like I was on vacation, you already had your work holiday. It's the 14th. You passed the deadline no matter what?
I mean, I've seen you. I've seen you since then. But if I hadn't seen you, I'd say I'd say Happy New Year. It's a good conversation opener.
I think it's way too far. Even if I haven't seen anyone, it's like I gotta wait till next year.
Man, you missed it.
You missed it.
You missed it. You gotta wait till another year, whole year. Let's get into our main topic today. So our main topic for today is going to be around Microsoft Fabric and Azure AI Foundry. Just kind of thinking about where data lives, where it exists inside Fabric, and it looks like it's getting easier and easier to pull data out of Fabric and use it in other parts of Azure as well, which is nice because then that makes sense. You're going to be bringing all this data to Fabric. You should be able to bolt on other elements of Azure if you need them. Anyways, that being said, that's going to be our main topic for today. Couple of news articles coming out today. So there has been it's January. Most of the development stuff slows down from Microsoft's side. There's typically not a lot of updates, but there has been 2 updates on the Fabric blog, but not necessarily the Microsoft Power BI blog. So I'd like to kick one off here. I'm really interested in this feature. It's actually in preview right now, but it looks like Aaron is talking about defining new security on folders using shortcuts. Now, this seems like a very nuanced topic, but I believe this is the beginning work around getting. I think they called it OneLake security, which is kind of a bad way of naming it because OneLake was always secure. It was always using Enter ID to secure who could have access to things. So, yeah, I don't really like the term. They used OneLake or One Security for the Fabric ecosystem. But it sounds like they're just adding more granular controls to OneLake. And this is something that people have been asking for, I think, for a while now. How do I give people access to single tables? Or how do I give people access to single folders inside the Lakehouse experience?
And I would agree with you, Mike. This is more than just a nice little feature. I've talked to some clients. We talked about Fabric security. There's a long pause. Yeah, we don't want that yet. Like we're not ready for that. Or it didn't have all the bells and whistles, or really more the foundation from a security point of view that they want.
Yes. And they're looking at it from hey, I have Databricks. I have other systems. I have other security mechanisms that I've been using. Right. So you kind of always comparing Fabric against what I know in Azure and what I know in like Databricks as these are the levels of security boundaries I could place. Now you come in Fabric. Oh, by the way, everything you put in Lakehouse can be seen by everyone in the workspace. Like that was a bit heavy handed. I think you have to go there initially, but we don't. The features that are coming out now are helping us get down to that detailed view of security.
It is a good point. For better or worse, everything in Fabric is going to be a comparison against the current products right now because nothing's terribly new. It's just, much more integrated. But yeah, man, when I saw this come out, I was like, okay, I already have like 3 scenarios where this is going to be incorporated in training. And I have that client I was talking about, I'm like, I'm going to call them back and go, hey, just so you know that now a feature that you were asking for that was not available, that really was your deal breaker, is available. But Mike, it's a preview feature. So
at least it's being worked on. I mean, again, one of these things, it's really hard to know what features exist or not exist based on what's preview and not preview. Again, we'll be very cautious here around preview features. Don't use it in production, but definitely test it out now. I think it's definitely something you want to go explore, use. If you have a proof of concept, this is a great place to go try this out with. So I do like this one. I think they're talking in the article about, being able to manage OneLake data access. You can make a role name and then you can assign people to that role. And then I think in that role, you can then pick out the various folders or tables or things you want people to have access to. So I think right now the security is at a object level item, right? So it's either a table or a folder that you can grant access to. I think eventually would be nice if we can get down to like, hey, I have a table and here's the row level security I'm going to apply to that table. So basically filter the table down to records this user can see. I don't know if they're going to ever get there at that point. I'm not sure if we're going to get that sophisticated, but it would be, I'd like to see it eventually.
So, Mike, this brings up a question that I have for you, I think for us to discuss right off of the security feature. To your point, this is very nuanced. This is not just put a security on your semantic model or on a workspace. This is very,
Correct.
this is like it's very into the weeds. So, and I think a lot of these security features that are going to come out kind of are going to follow this route. So, my question to you: who's in charge of this at an organization? If I am in charge of the lake house, if I'm in charge of that workspace, am I doing this? Obviously, this is not just something that you just go into.
Yeah, this is something I think that actually aligns very well with the administration and the deployment and governance roadmap. So the adoption roadmap from Power BI or now Fabric, I think they've kind of adjusted it for Fabric related things. But I think this is actually very clearly in line with what you should be doing already in workspaces is really think about who is supposed to be owning and controlling things inside that workspace. One of the things that we like to convey to our customers is you should only really have one or two admins on a workspace. That those are the people that are in charge of all the administration, the governance of those things. Typically, this is you see this is a person potentially from the central IT organization. So there's like a central IT person or security group that's being attached at the admin level, right? So that way the admins can come in and assist with anything that's inside the workspaces that they need to, if required. But there should always be some sort of like business lead person or persons attached to that. The reason being is that way when something goes wrong or you need to go talk to someone or there's a transition plan, if someone's moving on, having one admin in a workspace kind of decides that there's some ownership around that. The majority of the people should be contributors and not even members, I think, for that matter. So I think it depends organization by organization. For sure, the admin is responsible for if there is supposed to be security. That's the reach out. That's a point of contact. I mean, that's how I would look at it.
Yeah.
I don't take the approach of a centralized authority on everything like this because this is going to be, there's going to be some organizations that have centralized business intelligence teams that do this, and there's going to be other parts of the organization that just own and manage their own things. So you have to have a plan, I think, to manage both of these. And as your organization gets larger, you're going to have a wider diversity of how you have to manage this stuff.
And there's a bit of a catch-22 there, right? Where, especially with security now in Fabric, and I'm going to speak specifically to Fabric. Power BI, I think we've talked about security. If you want to excel and go quickly and accelerate your adoption, you can't do that. And at the same time, expect people to understand the security in Fabric without training, without going through proper channels, right? So you can't have both. You can't have this accelerated adoption and expect everything to run smoothly. Like we're looking at subfolders and shortcuts, right? You're not just getting a person who's getting to Fabric day one and saying you can understand this, you can run with this. If you want the right security, if you want to feel secure about that, there's going to be that additional training that you're going to have to do with those admins or those I don't want to say lay people, but the business to do. But then you're kind of hampering adoption a little because everyone would have to go through that route. On the other side, yeah.
I see what you're saying there, though. I see what you're saying about the training around things. Although I disagree with how you're approaching it. I mean, I think you're assuming that people are going to show up with day one and just be like, here you go. You shouldn't do that. I mean, that's not the right approach. I think because Fabric actually has some weighted cost to really step into,
of course,
doing something in Fabric, right? So there's an additional cost. They're going to have pro licenses. They're going to be paying for premium at some level of Fabric. So I don't think you give everyone access to this, right? This is there are probably a select few users in your company that are going to try things out and figure out what works. And those users are going to be like expected to go learn about, we don't know how to use Fabric security for our organization yet. We need to figure out what that looks like, or we need to go get some training from some other place or read the docs or spend some proof of concept around, does this actually work for our use case? So I think there's going to be some people that are kind of bleeding edge that you're going to give them access to it, but knowing that they're going to figure out the policies or the procedures that will make this work in your organization. For the broader part of the organization, I don't think you give access to this. I think you have there needs to be a level of gatekeeping and a minimum amount of training to get people in the door, right? I think there is too many there's too many opportunities to share things in an inappropriate way or give out too much information that would cause the organization to say, whoa, we didn't really have the right policies in charge here. I think we've talked about this in the podcast before. I've been in an organization where a report got shared with everyone's salary for the company to the entire organization. Yeah. What this was, it wasn't a fault of the technology. It was a fault of the training or the onboarding of the organization giving people access to Power BI. Oh, it's Power BI, great. They're asking for it, let's give it to them. There was no thought to how are these people going to learn how to share? How are these people going to learn how to build semantic models? What do we as an organization think are the right boundaries of what Power BI should be able to do? Because it can do a lot, and it's designed to make it easy for people to share things.
1,000%. But you're also talking about two people who eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. So obviously, if you and I were rolling this out, it'd be a bit smoother. What was your background in engineering again?
Mechanical engineering.
Yeah. So I come from the idiot engineering school, and that engineering specifies that everyone's an idiot until proven otherwise. You and I both know that there's going to be a lot of people who jump into Fabric, a lot of organizations who jump into Fabric where that it's not going to be the same rollout. There's not going to be the same knowledge, and you're going to still have to deal with this. We've covered that, but I think the bigger thing here is if you're an organization just starting, or if you're the person kind of running with this, I would absolutely push for the proper channels of, if you're going to be an admin of a workspace, you are very much more needing the proper training for those people. If you're going to rely on people to do that, much more than even just a semantic model, where it's like, hey, I can build, I can read, or I can share it in an app. Cool. Well, we have so many other sub levels here and so many other tentacles that you got to be aware of, like right off the bat.
I'm gonna take a little issue to your phrase there that you're using for proper training. I don't know if that's clearly defined for people, and I think that might be a term. Like, the question would, to my stand back of this, whatever you say, like, so what is proper training? What does that mean to our organization? And I think proper training, I wouldn't necessarily use that. I would probably use just the phrase of people have been trained or have been required to go through some
gone to a seminar
training or something. But Microsoft actually has a lot of really good documentation, and actually on their Microsoft Learn platform, which I'll push people to, there's actually a lot of really good documentation there. And actually, I like it because it quantifies a person's score to what they've learned. So as long as you're signed in, you can actually get a score, and we can verify that you've done the reading of the content. And there's a test or quiz at the end that give you just a little bit of a mental check as to, did you actually read the content? And actually, I really like that. Also, Tommy, I think to your point as well around this training pieces of this might be an area where in the past, I have not hired based on certifications from Microsoft. But now that we're talking like security, and we're talking people that have more access to the things in Fabric, again, there's so much to do. I think I might lean a little bit more on, hey, this might be a good opportunity for, if we're going to give people access to these things, we would want them to have gone through a minimum of a certification as a way of learning and experiencing this platform before they actually get into using it. So there may be something there too, Tommy. Is there really there's a lot of like a DP600.
There's a coded security one, but they all cover it in
various ways.
Well, everyone put in your notebooks, episode 389, where Mike talks about the benefits of training. You can put that in your AI title. No, but that's a good point, because when I say proper too, maybe that's because I've been talking to Gil from Australia.
And well, you say proper, but I think you mean like there needs to be a threshold. There's a bar. There's a bar to jump over.
Saying proper kind of.
It's like we need everyone to have a minimum level of understanding of what's going on here.
Right.
Like that's what we're looking at.
Right.
And then to that end, though, I mean, to really beat this point to death, if we make those kind of things, if we make these kind of policies, hey, we expect this kind of behavior with security, securing tables, giving access to things. For example, my earlier statement, hey, we'd like to have 1 or 2 admins on the workspace. Okay, if that's your policy, what are you doing to measure that? And again, a lot of organizations I talk to, they fall off the wagon on this one. Like
it was an hour. That's what they say.
We have these great ideas of like policies, but no one has the ability to enforce them or to see where they are. How many people do we actually have in? How many workers do we have where there is more than one admin? That's the part that I think more organizations need help with, is figuring out, okay, we've made these policies, what metrics or what data are we getting out daily to help us meet these goals and objectives, because that's what our policies are. It's there. You can go get the data, but many people don't actually go get it and actually utilize it as actionable information. So that's another area where I'm like, people need to learn more about how to monitor their solution. A lot of organizations fly blind and let people just do things with minimal investment at the administration level. That needs to be automated. So I think there's a lot there too as well. All right, what else are we going to talk about here? Any other topics, Tommy? I did also put the link in here for the Learn documentation around access data roles. And I think you've got another link here. Looks like
same link, I think.
Same link for security stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, same link. Getting started with one link data access roles. Okay, so those are the 2 main topics. All right, enough of that. Let's transition, if you're good, Tommy. Let's go over to our main topic today. Our main topic today is going to be talking about Microsoft Fabric and its connection to the Azure AI Foundry. Give us a little introduction here, Tommy. I got to be honest. I haven't played a lot with the Azure AI Foundry. I've done a couple things. My general feel is I found a lot of the AI tools that Microsoft has built either expensive, or there's too much barrier to get started and playing with things. So I'm kind of curious to see where you're going to take things here. And regardless, at any AI platform, or whenever you're building AI related things, you're going to need a lot of data behind it. So Fabric is that place to go get the data from.
And I think we'll start small and kind of expand to the bigger topic here. But so the Azure AI Foundry, if you're not aware, is kind of the evolution of what was called the AI Studio. This was simply your ability to take a given AI model, let's say a ChatGPT, but like ChatGPT 3.5 or Turbo or O1 or whatever the models are now, you can in a sense create your own. It's off the same model, off of OpenAI. You can train it off your own data. You can add your own prompts and kind of create your own, in a sense, ChatGPT for your own organization. There's a ton of other things there. There's image generation, text generation, scanning, image recognition. But the idea really is simply that in my organization, ChatGPT is cool. There's also Copilot, but I want something more customizable. I want something more advanced for my organization or for a solution that I'm working on. Enter AI Foundry, and that's exactly what it's there for. Now, why would we be speaking about that on a Power BI Microsoft Fabric podcast? Well, one of the major announcements that Microsoft did during Ignite was the fact that in the AI Foundry, in their AI platform, well, I need data. To your point, Mike, you want good AI, you need good data. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. A direct connector now in AI Foundry is Microsoft Fabric. This is, for me, pretty incredible, because our entire lives before Microsoft Fabric, Power BI was really the last stop of the bus, on the bus route where my data lived. It went through the integration, it went through processing, it went through engineering, it went through a semantic model, and then it ended at Power BI, my semantic model. Yeah, I could connect to other reports from there, but it did not live anywhere else. There was really no other ability for what the data that I've already worked so hard and blood, sweat, and tears on could do. Well, Microsoft Fabric is now showing us that I can do the same engineering, work as hard on my data, but now it becomes elevated in AI Foundry, where I can actually use my business data, whether it's a lakehouse or however I want to structure it, and use it directly in AI Foundry. To me, this is, again, if you're not in the AI world, it sounds like, okay, that's nice. But again, a lot of organizations, the biggest issue with getting their AI solutions up is their data. And now we have this direct connection with Microsoft Fabric. So I think the small story here for us today is this ability with AI Foundry, we've talked about AI a lot. What does that impact? But I think the larger story here, Mike, is the fact that we're seeing with Microsoft Fabric more and more that it is no longer the end goal for the business intelligence team or the business intelligence platform that we're just reporting on data. Well, I can use it now in solutions that my organization needs. It's a SQL database, which we all know what a SQL database can be. It can be used in Power Apps. It can be used in normal applications, or it can be used in AI solutions. And I think that's the bigger story, but let's start small. And let's kind of on the very subset here of the AI Foundry. This is a big deal. And Mike, I know you said you kind of touched and played with it a little, but you know how much and what you've dealt with AI already in terms of the ability to work with the data. But what have you seen here?
Yeah, let me give you just some context. I've spent some time in IT spaces building out solutions around lots of unstructured data, right? And to be honest, I play a lot around with our podcast videos.
Yeah.
Our podcast videos has a lot of potential, and I haven't really actually been able to find a solution that does a great job. So, where does AI start really becoming impactful? And again, I'm just going to kind of speak to my own experiences where I've kind of started using it in other tools, and then maybe where does that start supporting things that we're going to start seeing in Fabric? Maybe the join here, right? One thing I think is really interesting is a lot of these services that Microsoft is providing, particularly through Azure. There's a whole bunch of Azure AI based services that are already there. They've been there for years. So it's not like this is a new thing for them. So, like for example, they've kind of rebranded a couple things. Like there's an Azure AI Open AI service, right? So you can build your own Copilot. Have an Azure AI search that's helping you do vector searching or hybrid searching inside these different systems you want to build. There's actually Azure AI Content Safety, Azure AI Translator, translating different languages for you, AI to speech, AI for language, AI vision. So there's a lot of machine learning algorithms that have already been built. And if I think about what I'm trying to do as an organization, like let's imagine I'm in an organization, I'm showing up, I have a lot of media or images or things I need to go tag. One of these major things that we require is a lot of tagging of information. All right, I have a lot of images. I wanted to search for something that has color blue in it, or it has a picture of a computer, or maybe you're in an industry that's doing some sort of inspection on buildings and you want to search for cracked pipes or electrical defects, whatever that may be. Your business may run on a bunch of images that need to be very quickly searchable and optimized for like search. This is where the AI services come from. And as me as an organization, I'm thinking, I kind of like this idea of build the solution first, prove that it works, and then optimize later. And what I mean by that is Microsoft has already built a lot of services that do this for you. Was working with a client recently. One good area to apply some AI is if you have feedback coming about your products. Well, can AI summarize all the feedback coming back to your products, like through your website or comments, or there's a database of some, where a lot of this information comes from, right? What's the average sentiment on each product that I have? Can we read through the comments and from those comments gather out the key likes and dislikes of a particular product? I think AI is actually pretty good at those things. The reason I'm bringing all this up is I think Microsoft does a good job of giving you a lot of standard, let's call it building blocks like Legos, to get you started. You don't have to build all this stuff from scratch and train everything to beginning. Like it's expensive to do that. So I think there's this idea of large companies, the big three, Microsoft, Google, and AWS, are going to provide service layer for just AI things. This is where I think Fabric and the AI Foundry is trying to make its position here is, okay, we've got a library of services that are AI related. What can we do to make that easier for you to bring your Fabric data? Like, for example, what if I want to bring my podcast? How do I bring that into a Fabric world or an Azure Data Studio world where I can utilize that information to be highly responsive, right? So a lot of your systems, I think, in AI start out as this kind of like batch processing, right? Hey, I'm going to process a bunch of comments about our products and provide input back to the users. At some point in the future, you want to have real-time analytics on that. As comments come in, I immediately review that comment and say, is this something that my sales team needs to take action on immediately? Because there's a poor performing, or someone wrote something really bad about the product and we don't, someone needs to go look at this, right? When do I need human interaction, and what of this can be just fully automated? Anyways, I'll just pause right there. I've said a lot of things, Tommy, around this one, but I am kind of on the fence here a little bit around, like, not fence. I'm kind of still trying to unpack, like, what the scope of what Microsoft can provide in the AI services space. And then you build using their tools, and eventually you get to the point where you want it to be more cost economical, and you stop using their custom tools and you start building custom things that you need, but you now understand the value of that AI thing, right? It's very expensive. I don't want to spend 6 months developing an AI solution to only find that it doesn't work, or it's not adding value to our customers, or it's not driving sales. Like, that would be a waste of time and effort. So what can we do to go faster to get through that initial stage? And then we can always come back to that and say, what can we do to optimize it moving forward?
So 2 quick things. One, I'm worried that you have a microphone in my office, because that example you gave about the blue products, I literally was showing my wife the other day. And I said,
nice.
no, just imagine you wanted blue products. So I'm worried that you're listening to everything that I say, even when we're not recording.
That microphone, that podcast microphone is actually wired into my home computer.
This microphone, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I think that the implications here, and I think the testing side's huge. By the way, if you're going to create something, make sure you look at all the settings in AI Foundry. There's one where you can turn the safety completely off. And my first thought when I saw that, I was like, why? Like, you could basically turn the AI safety on how you want the temperament to be and what it could, in a sense, respond with, completely at a 0. And I'm like, who needs that? Anyways, but the point is, Mike, this is terribly expensive to get, especially with all of the scenarios, even in a very direct solution that you may want. What people may be asking, what the automation and the intake or input that it's getting is going to derive a ton of different, in a sense, results, and a lot of unintended results. Mm-hmm. Mike, that's why I'm doing a lot of the testing. I have a lot of local AI models right now, because I'm not willing from a one-person organization to spend what could be astronomical money. Other organizations are. The biggest thing is this, and especially with organizations who are willing to test and are going to use the cloud and AI Foundry, is we have a budget that we know is going to be just for testing. And that's the biggest part that they have. We already have this influx of data, so the testing is going to happen faster. The more data you have, the more you can refine it, and the more the output you can see. But the problem is not having the data in the right way, and not having enough of that data in that structure that you need it. You may have the data, but again, AI models don't necessarily require a semantic model. And that's also been the problem. Like, I have this great data in Power BI. I have this great data that I've cleaned and I've structured, and I know it's only the right stuff, but I can't do anything with it with other solutions that I'm having. It would be great to do with with AI solutions, because my goodness, again, if you want your AI solution to work, make sure your data works. There is no way around that. And what we're seeing now, Mike, is especially, I think, why that push, especially was one of the 3 major announcements around the AI solution, was Microsoft Fabric. The fact that I can now use any of the data in Microsoft Fabric that I deem fit, not coming from Databricks, not coming from some other AI data engineering solution, which are all out there, expensive, and disconnected to my normal data. I can now use Fabric and directly connect that, and now feed that into that system. And to the last point that you said too, is like in the sense of what the output or the results are. Well, again, all the normal models that you're aware of today, and again, the 3 major ones here are the Google AI Studio, Claude or Anthropic, and then OpenAI, are all available, and I can create off of that model, and that can be the base of what I want AI to do, or what I want my solution to do. It's not all this chat or generative AI. Again, a huge one today is image generation or image recognition. Is it blue? Can I find certain things? But the biggest point here, out of all those solutions, no matter what you're dealing with, if you wanted to really be the expectation you're looking for, it needs the right data, and it's probably going to need your data.
This is interesting because I'm looking. There's a lot of these things around like a RAG, a RAG AI. So
retrieval,
a RAG, retrieval augmented generative, something like that. I don't know what it is. But I think the idea really is, hey, I've got a large language model and I'm adding some supplemental data to it that's going to help it give me better context. So this is, I believe, what's happening when you're using like Copilot inside your emails, right? Say, hey, based on this email, what's the summary of this information? And I'm finding I'm starting to I'm trying to utilize it in more efficient ways. Like I have a lot of times I'll have, where customer requests will come in. I run a training.tips class for people to learn more about Power BI and Fabric. And sometimes I get requests in there that come through. And one thing I'll use is I'll take the comments out of that, or comments or responses from a form, and I'll just summarize it. I'll use Copilot and say, can you just summarize this? What are the main bullet points this person's asking for? What services are they asking for, right? So sometimes I get requests. So I use that as a method to groom some of my sales channel. And so instead of having someone read all of that and then summarize it into bullet points, I can use the AI to do some of these things as well. So technically, I can do more on my own without needing additional people or resources to do these things. Where things are going to get interesting, I think here, especially in the AI Foundry, is there's actually even, and this may be part of AI Foundry. I'm not exactly sure if it's kind of all bolted together yet, Tommy, but you can go to GitHub Models, I believe, as well.
That's another one too. Yeah. Well, that's not connected to AI Foundry, but
but it's like the same models though. It's still using it's still using like Llama 3.1, but you can use
organization, different division. So
okay. Yeah. So there's another feature that I have played with a little bit is GitHub Models. And so the idea here is Microsoft will host these various models for you. And again, it takes compute to run these things, a GPU, and it's expensive potentially to run these things. So what they're doing is they're saying, look, here's a bunch of free models that you can go play with, use, and see if they add value. Again, I think what the idea here is the barrier to entry on some of these products, you need to just understand, does this thing you're thinking of, does it even add value? And so does the cost of running this model outweigh the value of what you're producing with the output of it, right? So, sorry, total side note. I mean, I'm just randomly thinking about all the AI and where this fits.
Good point, though, too. You have to be conscious of the cost and the computation that it takes.
And when I look at Fabric, I think a lot about Fabric. Fabric is more about like numbers, tables, data. Yeah, maybe there's some API things in there, but I think at the end of the day, most of the things we're talking about in Fabric are table-based information. I don't think Fabric is becoming my go-to place for like where I want to store video or where I want to run a bunch of take this video and turn it into a transcript. There's the opportunity to do it inside notebooks, but I'm not utilizing that yet inside Fabric. Most of what I'm doing is pure data engineering, table data, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think this is another potential area where does the AI fit with where Fabric is going? Because a lot of the AI feels like it's fitting on top of like language, speech, text, audio, video. That seems a lot of like where the AI thing goes, because those are difficult problems to solve. Maybe
I love where you're going with this.
Does that make sense? Like I
love where you're going with this.
I feel like there's a break in the sand between like where I feel like AI is fitting right now versus what maybe we want AI to be doing in the future with our data.
I love where you're going with this in the direction of Fabric too. And a side note to your computation point of view, I don't know if you know the GPUs on your graphics card, but man, I went down rabbit holes and I understand everything about my NVIDIA graphics card and what it takes to run what. But to your point, and I think this is a really good transition here where we've still, and I don't know if we still do, but I think there's still the common thought process around Fabric is there's a certain user story. I'm going to process data in, I'm going to store it, I'm going to standardize it, and I'm going to report on it. That's kind of the path A, B, and C for a lot of people on what I'm going to do with my data in Fabric. You bring up a very, very good point on, I think, the capabilities of Fabric that I think a lot of people aren't thinking of. Let's say you wanted to do your scenario.
Doesn't mean it can't do it. I mean, doesn't mean you can't throw it. And actually, I've seriously talked to you, Tommy, about a lot of this on like behind the scenes here. I'm like, I would really like to be able to like stop storing our videos on like a SharePoint drive. I'd like to start sticking them in like Fabric and start leveraging Fabric to like do things with the video. Like how cool would it be to like index all the topics and the phrases and like what we're saying? Like I should be able, in my vision here, and I don't know where this probably exists. Someone has a product. So if someone's already interacted with this or has their product, put it in the chat window. I'd love to hear about it. But I'm pretty sure there's a tool out there that would probably like, hey, here's 388 episodes of podcast. Go run indexing on all the transcripts, find all the main topics and key phrases, which make a library of them, and then just give me a link to here's if I search for something, give me all the key topics out of it, get me to that area. So where does AI fit in this? AI fits in the taking the video and the audio and turning it into actual text, computer readable text. And then another part of the AI space would be like building like a graph, right? So yeah, exactly, Jack, right? How many times did the Explicit Measure podcast say game changer, and what features were those about, right? We should be able to ask questions like that against the topics and content we're creating here. And my opinion is the world is just going to be consumed more and more and more with video and creation content that it's going to be video format because it's becoming easier and easier to build that stuff.
Do you know one of the biggest did you know?
Please tell me.
What if you were to guess what is one of the largest departments that is utilizing AI today? If you were looking at an organization, what do you think which department or one of the departments that is utilizing heavily AI?
Homeland Security.
No, not government departments.
You didn't specify.
Take an organization, one of the major departments. Which one do you think is utilizing AI and the AI tooling the most or most heavily today?
I'm going to propose where I think they're using it based on spend. I think marketing is finding the most amount of value from AI because it's, so in the past you'd have to, again, this is where I'm thinking like you'd have to pay a lot of money to the marketing people and say, hey, I need a image that does this. And that would be hours of time of someone sitting in a graphics program and like, what kind of styles do you like? Yeah. What kind of colors is your cool? Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
I don't think we have. Yeah. But the idea is like, you have to spend a lot of time there to get to that point. And, now I'm seeing articles coming out that say, look, companies are saving millions of dollars a year on generating like 80 pieces of content and then letting the AI say, look, okay, here's all these different pieces of content, send them out. Which one of those are performing? And the AI generated content is outperforming the human generated content at this point for like returns on their money and investments. Like this is becoming really, really interesting.
Mike, in the world of Fabric too. So when we think data, right? When I think the last 9 years of our lives, when we think data, I'm thinking tabular models, rows, aggregations, something in DAX, that's data. Well, to a larger organization, data is what's in SharePoint. Data is what's in OneDrive. Data is your pamphlets and your media and all the other things that we would go, well, those are files, but that's still data. And use an AI movie, so to speak, to see if you can know which movie I'm talking about. I think we need to think about Fabric to free your mind. Remember them?
Is that one with the pill, the blue pill?
The Matrix.
Well, not the
very scary to watch, especially after ChatGPT came out.
Yes, true.
But really the idea here is we have the path A, B, and C for Fabric since Fabric's coming out. I think for a lot of us coming from the business intelligence background is Fabric's for Power BI, Fabric's for reporting, Fabric's for our data that we're aggregating, counting, and in a sense, our metrics. Well, the thing is, to your point, Mike, the media side of things, and again, that's a side of it. Fabric can do a lot, and it is because it is a full-fledged lakehouse. It
can store the media.
We can store the media, and again, marketing is just a subset here. It's not just that type of media, or that it can be files too. And because of things like the AI Foundry now, or really, I think I'm going to put it the other way. The things like Fabric that allow us to now connect to other sources, where Fabric has elevated our data and, more importantly, the storage of our data into other services, other platforms. is absolutely huge. And it's time for us to really think about, well, what else can Fabric can do with not just our aggregated data, but the data that we, in a sense, live by.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be interesting. I'm not sure where this is actually going to land on the topic of things here, but are we going to start seeing? So where does AI fit in Fabric, right? Where does this, so where's the lens of this? I kind of start becoming relevant to us. I mean, so we have all the data. So pipelines are getting data in. You have mirroring of various artifacts. You can like mirror a SQL database, which brings that data in. We now have Fabric SQL, so you can do operational data right inside your Fabric environment. Like an example might be is if you're collecting feedback forms from someone, or you have something on a website where you actually want to get that data in and analyze it, it might make sense to then start landing that data initially in Fabric and building the infrastructure directly in Fabric and using that as the landing zone for that operational data. Because if you're getting comments back or feedback or whatever that is, you're going to want to put it somewhere and you're going to want to do some sort of analytics on it. But I think the notebooks, in my opinion here, that's where we start moving away from like the data engineering and the analyst roles, and we move way more into data science, AI, and bolting things in there. And so there is a lot of rich features in there. And so we're also getting the ability to add additional notebooks as well. Mm-hmm. So you can run a pure Python notebook on a single cluster inside notebooks now.
Crazy. So this is so crazy. I feel like we haven't given enough due credit.
Well, my one question here, though, is, and I don't know, maybe someone can fact check me on this one. Are we able to use a GPU, graphics processor enabled unit, Spark cluster inside Fabric? So my understanding is if you're going to process video or audio with a Spark library or libraries, you need to have a GPU-enabled cluster to do so. And I don't know if we get those by default, what comes out of Fabric. And my understanding is
the cost,
the GPU clusters are very expensive. This is, Tommy, why you run models on your local machine, because you need the GPU available to you to run all these heavy calculations on things. So
I still like going out to eat. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You don't want to spend all your money. And again, it's like what works, like what is going to be useful to your organization. You need to experiment these things first. So, you want those. You don't want to be a burden.
Two important concepts, I think, to your point. You cannot forget how early we are in the game right now when it comes to AI solutions, AI products, and just having the AI in the cloud. I would say we're like in the 1999 to the internet bubble with AI stuff right now, where it's like internet for everything. Look, AOL, we're going to, the number one thing about AOL back in the day was growth. It wasn't even, they were losing money hand over fist, but the number one metric and why their stock went up was growth, was just the number of subscribers. And I think right now with AI, we're still seeing this. We're still so new into the game and to, I think, the implications of it that, if you were to run this, Mike, let's say we're going to do that test. We're going to run, your marketing media information. We're even just our podcast. Well, we're not going, we're going to forego our vacation this year too, or your taxes. I don't know, whichever one kind of thing, but it's going to be a pretty penny. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't start. I think the biggest part here is there's a lot of testing that needs to be done here too. And like, if I were to have someone to come and say, we really want to try this in Fabric, well, we're going to create a subset. I would have its own SKU. I would not include this with our normal Fabric SKU. I would have it's kind of its own separate environment in Fabric to do so. And there's a lot of benefits here, but I think there's also you should still be very cautious in terms of just getting started. I don't know if that answers your question terribly, or if you want to rephrase it.
No, I guess where I'm going with this is like, the Azure AI Foundry is more equipped for handling those graphical and media type, like the unstructured, more of that unstructured data. We can do a lot of things with what we have in Fabric today, but I don't believe there's like, I'm even looking at like, I'm going into the Spark configuration settings right now. There is no option to pull down a GPU enabled cluster that you can use, right? So let me give you some contrast, right? I'm familiar working with Databricks, and if I want Databricks to go process images, video, other things, or write notebooks on top of that with Spark, you can do so inside Databricks. You go into the cluster configuration and you can pick a GPU enabled item from Databricks, then you can utilize that to do the processing of that data. Today in Fabric, if you brought a bunch of video in there, I don't think you can process the video today currently, because there's no GPU enabled items. So this is where I think a good fit for AI Foundry makes sense. Is you'll need to, you could store the videos in Fabric, but you'll need to go to something else like an AI Foundry, process those videos down, spit out the output of that transcript or topic or analysis, and you could write that back into the Lakehouse, and then you could report on it. So it's not fully integrated yet, but I do think that Fabric becomes a data source to AI.
Yeah. I may not be able to process in Fabric, like to your point, I may not be able to write the notebook in Fabric and do my analysis there over the media, but I can store that data in Fabric, and it's going to get processed on the Azure Foundry side, not the Fabric side.
Correct. So you're gonna have to have a relationship there between the two parts of those tools.
Right. So,
and I do think it makes sense to keep it in Fabric, because then eventually you're going to want to get back out into Fabric and utilize it for reporting or other needs as well.
I think as we get kind of closer, unless you had anything right off of that too, but I think as we're getting closer, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me here is the fact that our Fabric data is elevated now to a point where I think AI Foundry is one of the first ones that we're seeing this with, but we're going to see it in a ton of other places where there's this direct Fabric connector with my stored data. And I think I'm surprised we haven't seen it directly in Copilot, but all the other Microsoft systems, but it's going to be much more than just Microsoft too, because let's not take away the fact, or really in a sense undermine the fact that I have a complete Lakehouse whenever I create something in Fabric, and the ease of that, and what a Lakehouse right now can connect to, or what a SQL database can connect to. What we're going to be seeing more and more is not just that I'm going to be reporting with my data in Fabric, but I'm going to store data in Fabric, or I'm going to keep data in Fabric to connect it on any of my other systems, any of my other products or platforms that, my custom CRM system. Well, guess what? It's a Lakehouse that has this direct connection to store data. This is pretty incredible for us, especially coming from just a Power BI background or from just a business intelligence background. It really grows the game, I think, in terms of what our role is going to be, or what your current role was.
I agree with you, Tommy, there. And I think we're at I'm worried that we're in a bit of a hype cycle at this point with AI. I still think it's not quite solid enough for people to really kind of implement it. We're finding very specific small use cases where I think AI makes a lot of sense, right? Summarizing various things. I don't know if I didn't catch wind of this, but I was hearing some other people kind of chatting, there's a bit of I don't know, overhyping maybe. I mean, so some of the Microsoft market price has been dropping down here recently in the last couple of days, and it sounded to me like the market was excited about a lot of the AI developments. Microsoft Ignite happened, but the market was kind of like, okay, yeah, this is cool stuff, but it's kind of underwhelming at this point. And so I think, I'm not sure if we're at the top of that hype cycle. I'm thinking about the Gartner hype cycle, right? There's this excitement ramping up to this new technology, it could solve all these problems. And then as people dig into it, they find, oh, wow, this is a lot more difficult than I found when I started. It solves, 75% of my problems, but it's not really solving everything I want. It's not quite right. So the idea or the concept or integration of these things need to continue to refine themselves. One thing I think is going to be increasingly important for us, whatever you do, consume the internet or however you use the internet, but I think it's going to be harder and harder to discern what things are real, what things are actionable, because AI is going to be everywhere, especially in these marketing platforms. If you bring AI and make marketing cheaper to do for companies, what is that going to do? It's just going to spawn more marketing advertising spend or advertising in general from companies, right? If they can get better results and they can find that it's cheaper for them to at least create the creatives initially, all that's going to do is just drive more of it. So I think we're in a place here where we're it's in early days stages. I like learning from people who've already done things before me. So my takeaway from this one really is research what other companies are doing, building models, where are they applying the models, which programs. I have a list in Microsoft lists. I guess it's just their lists program, whatever. In that list, I just made every single AI that I hear or being advertised. I just write down the name of it and like what it does, and just kind of listen to. So I'm just kind of like taking an input right now and figuring out, okay, what do all these things do? I just watched a video yesterday on YouTube of a content creator saying that they are now using generative AI to deepfake their voice and use it as transcripts. So like, if you're building content where you're regularly outputting the same content over and over again for hours on end, like training documentation, right? It's kind of mundane. You have to just get the details across. Sometimes there's mistakes and you have to go back and re-record something, or something updates and you want to update that portion of the code. It's nice to have generative AI just step in and just fix a 1 or 2 minute segment of that using generative AI.
We talked about this a year ago where we could go international.
Yeah, we could do
like Benvenuti, fratelli. Like we could do a whole Italian one.
Explicit measures in different languages. Like we could start expanding. But again, a lot of this is like, these are just the initial use cases of this.
Yeah.
What we need more people to come in and build a complete solution. I feel like what the AI is doing is what Microsoft has done with Fabric right now. Is Microsoft is making Fabric a data commodity. Everyone can build data and really reports and analytics, right? That's making that easy for everyone has been the goal. And I think Fabric is making this easier every day. It's not super seamless yet, but it's getting better every day or every month we go through the program. I think AI is in the same route. A lot of core functional building blocks. If you're super technical, you can make it work for you. But AI right now isn't super smooth. There's not like a, take this data table. Let me give you some other.
Yeah.
I'm going to step back here just a minute and give you some big picture here, right? Imagine I've got a semantic model. I've got my facts and dimensions formed and flattened out. I want to just query that data and send the output of that result row by row over to some sort of AI thing. I think we can kind of do that today with notebooks in its current form. But the integration needs to be tighter. It needs to be easier to do. I really do think there needs to be more of this graphical user interface of click this button, pick these AIs, create this new table of data, and then spit it back out and land it in our lake. That's what we need to get to. And I don't think we're quite there yet, but I see visions of this. Oh boy, this is another episode, right? I'm having another episode 1 type thing, right? If I could, if I can put my thinking cap on and say, what does this look like 5 years from now? I think
we're all going to control it by the phone.
No, I don't think phones are the way to go. I think phones are too small to really do stuff. But I think in general, the UI will become simpler, and there's going to be tighter integrations to models and raw data that's coming out of systems. And you're going to be able to bolt these two worlds together better inside Fabric. I think that's where we're going.
Let me give you, and I'll close with some optimism, especially I think for a lot of people too, in terms of where we're going with AI. A lot of people, the best way to equate where we're at with AI, even the big players and the small players, is the internet bubble. Mm-hmm. We may be in a hype bubble right now, but let's consider the internet bubble. When the internet bubble burst, did the internet go away? Did it just disappear?
It took its up and downs. It didn't disappear fully.
No,
but
we obviously still use the internet pretty heavily today. And I think right now, to your point, it may not be the perfect system yet, or we haven't found the perfect pathway from a user interface to the process intake and then what the actual product's going to be. But I think for a lot of us too, if you're thinking, well, it's just a hype bubble. Well, it's the hype bubble to say the same way the internet was. It's not going to go away. But it's definitely going to change forms.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some big players in this space that's going to make this easy for us to get into, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, right? There's a lot of no-name companies
right now, not creation.
There's so many different companies and smaller companies. We need like a shakeout of the market, right? We need
exactly.
There's a lot of good ideas probably happening all at once, but there's so much of it. How can any one person really be up on all these different AI models and companies, and everyone's doing their own little spin on this and trying to build programs extremely fast? Like, at some point, this is going to have to shake out, and the companies that are left standing at the end of this are the ones that are going to add real value to businesses. Those are the ones that people are going to really be able to invest in. So, there's going to be a wave of this, and I think we're at a place where there's too much right now. We need some the main players to rise to the occasion, and we need the people that are just making noise to kind of disappear, because I think it's also clutting the waters a little bit here. It's hard to see what's the right tool I should be using for some of these AI generated things.
And while you're waiting, clean your data.
Yeah, while you're waiting,
when that time comes, they're going to be waiting for the data. So that's exactly what we need to do.
That's a good point there, Tommy, too. I think it's get your arms around. Well, you say clean your data. I'm also going to echo another point here, that is just bring it to the same place.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think we've also had a challenge of a lot of data exists in many different systems all across our company. Even just for reporting on what historically has happened, we struggle to find it all in one place. And I think cleaning it, making sure we have good layers of data, understand what the data is doing, is going to be ever more important. But we're also going to need a place to just put it all. And this was probably about 10 years ago when I was doing some of the analysis for. I was researching data things for another company that I was working for, and they were saying data is growing at an exponential rate. The amount of data is being generated is growing exponentially. And here we are 10 years later, and there's just going to be, petabytes and petabytes and petabytes, much more data next year than it is this year. We're going to need systems that are going to be able to handle large volumes of data. And I think this is why Microsoft's moving this direction towards Fabric, pipelines, Spark, more efficient systems here. Okay, excellent. Well, with that being said, we really do appreciate your time. I hope this conversation wasn't too random, talking about like where AI fits and where Fabric fits. I think Tommy and I see a bright future. Tommy, you've been very heavy and pro AI-based things in general. Do a lot of playing around with it. Me, not so much. I focus a bit more on like the data engineering side for now, but I don't see any reason why these two worlds don't collide more in the future. And I could definitely see a vision where Fabric becomes
combined.
I feel like there's got to be a vision here where Fabric becomes more AI centric. I think that's how Microsoft is going to get more people invested in using Fabric, connecting it with AI. That being said, thank you all very much for your time today. If you like this podcast, please give us a like or a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts on this. Are you using AI today currently in your organization? Do you have you found any major wins with using AI? I'd be curious. And also, let us know, are you thinking about using Fabric in concert with AI? I'd be interested to know that as well. Please share this podcast with somebody else if you found this valuable. And with that, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, an idea, or a topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Well, keep going to powerbi.tips/podcast, because a ton of you have, and leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central, and join the conversation on all of Power BI Tips social media channels.
All right. We appreciate you all so much, and we will see you next time.